The former Attorney General has revealed that he decided military action in Iraq was legal more than a month before the invasion. His advice changed after a trip to Washington in February 2003, with him returning to give Tony Blair the green light sooner than had previously been thought. But Lord Goldsmith denied he'd been pressurised into the decision. This report from Michelle Clifford. Michelle, tell us more about today's...
Objective lawyer or Blair appointee doing his master's bidding. Lord Goldsmith countered the charge today that he bowed to political pressure and changed his mind. He said it was for others to decide if the war was right. He was there only to decide if it was legal. Without his say-so, Britain would not have gone to war against Saddam. Legal backing was a must for the government, and Lord Goldsmith eventually gave the go-ahead. But his judgment was a work in progress for months. He told the inquiry when his boss headed off to Crawford to meet George Bush a year before the conflict, he made his views very clear. A second UN resolution was needed for military action.
I didn't want there to be any doubt that, in my view, the Prime Minister could not have the view that he could agree with President Bush somehow, well, let's go without going back to the United Nations. I wasn't asked for it. I don't frankly think it was terribly welcome.
Welcome or not, Lord Goldsmith did not budge from that assessment for months. These declassified documents detail a call he made to then Foreign Secretary Jack Straw, challenging the Chinese whispers that suggested Resolution 1441, demanding Saddam give up weapons of mass destruction, sanctioned force. But he revealed his thinking shifted after a visit to the US in February 2003, when he met some of the key US players and the British ambassador involved in UN negotiations.
Is it right that on the 12th of February you made a revision to the draft opinion that you had shown to the Prime Minister in the middle of January, and that for the first time at this stage you stated that you were prepared to accept that a reasonable case could be made that 1441 revived the authorisation to use force in Resolution 678?
Yes. In the light of the further inquiries I'd made, following my visit to the United States, following discussions with Jeremy Greenstock, following my investigation of the negotiating history, I was of the view that a reasonable case could be made. There was a reasonable case that a second resolution was not necessary, and that was on past precedent, sufficient to constitute a green light.
Jack Straw, as one of the key figures in negotiations and a lawyer himself, helped persuade Lord Goldsmith that all those who backed 1441 knew it allowed for force, despite the fact that the French publicly opposed the war.
Did you then go and ask the French for their side of the story?
I plainly couldn't do that. I plainly couldn't have done that.
Well, that's a very important issue. Why couldn't you do that?
Well, I couldn't have done that because there we were, plainly by this stage, in a major diplomatic standoff, if you like, between the United States and France. You couldn't have had, and you couldn't have had the British Attorney General being seen to go to the French to ask them, what do you think? The message that would have given to Saddam Hussein about the degree of our commitment would have been huge.
On March the 7th, Lord Goldsmith formalised his opinion that a reasonable case could be made to launch an attack without a further UN resolution. But he warned that politicians and British troops could face legal action over the war. By March the 17th, he had adopted a firmer view after the military and ministers demanded a yes or no answer.
They deserved more. Our troops deserved more. Our civil servants who might be on the line deserved more than my saying there was a reasonable case, and therefore it was important for me to come down clearly on one side of the argument or the other.
Pressed on whether his change of heart followed a pincer movement by two top Blair insiders, Lord Faulkner and Baroness Morgan, he was emphatic in his response. He did not bow to political pressure.
Absolutely complete and utter nonsense.
Goldsmith insisted the political consequences for the government were irrelevant to him. He was there purely to offer legal opinion. Nothing more, nothing less.